The story of David Edwin Mason's life was the result of childhood neglect combined with an undiagnosed mental illness. Even as a young kid, he suffered from abuse in multiple ways, while also not being mentally strong enough to deal with the bullying he received. As a teenager, he experimented with multiple ways to commit suicide, like hanging, cutting, throwing himself down the stairs, and even setting himself on fire. David then turned his aggression outwards and began attacking fellow classmates and teachers, getting into several run-ins with the law. After a failed stint in the Marine Corps, he went back to his criminal ways, even resorting to murder seemingly for menial financial gains, as his victims were the most vulnerable of our society. Even behind prison walls, his thirst for blood couldn't be quenched. Welcome to History's Biggest Villains. David was born on December 2nd, 1956 in Statesboro, Georgia. According to his father, David's mother didn't want another baby, so while she was pregnant with him, she tried to miscarriage by lifting furniture and riding horses. Once the family moved to Oakland, California, David's parents became strict fundamentalist Pentecostals, subjecting him and his 7 siblings to various forms of abuse if they showed what was considered to be a lack of enthusiasm in religious activities. Due to relentless bullying at school, a 5-year-old David attempted suicide by swallowing a dozen pills. Later on, he was subject to multiple beatings with objects such as belts, switches, and even a pancake turner, as on 2 occasions, he was hit over 100 times. After all the things he went through at such a young age, the now 8-year-old David began to exhibit strange behaviors, as his dad caught him standing in front of his baby brother's crib with a knife in hand. After this behavior continued, David's parents locked him in his room for hours on end, even installing steel bars and a grate on the window to prevent escape. On one occasion, David pooped on himself, and his mom made him wear the dirty underwear on his head. As time passed, David continued to attempt suicide, resorting to hanging, cutting, throwing himself down the stairs, and even setting himself on fire. He then focused his aggression outwards, attacking fellow students and teachers alike, even attempting a couple arsons. David was arrested in 1970, and he reported the abuse he suffered to the police. After a psychiatric evaluation, it was determined that he had an IQ of 110, but he also showed signs of PTSD, and he was sent to a boarding school. David escaped from the school on several occasions, returning home and claiming that he was sexually abused by the staff and other children, but he was returned to the school every time. In 1973, he was arrested for another arson, being sentenced to several months in the juvenile detention center. After he returned home, he dropped out of school after his junior year, enlisting in the Marine Corps. He quickly lost interest in military service though, as after several disciplinary infractions, he was dismissed and sent home after 4 months. David's life spiraled out of control after this, as he resorted to odd job after odd job, including selling his own body. On July 8, 1977, David was carrying an ice pick looking to rob a store, as he entered one and stumbled upon the clerk, Virginia Jansen. David stabbed her in the back with the ice pick before stealing her pocketbook and $270 from the register. He cleaned his fingerprints off of various items, then he threatened to kill her if she called the police on him. Jansen survived her attack, and she positively identified him to the police. David was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison, being paroled after 2. His crimes escalated to a new level after his release, as his new target was 72-year-old Joan Picard. He had known her for 8 years, as he had done various cleaning and yard work assignments for her. Since he had frequently been in her home, he knew that she had a collection of rare antique coins. Joan had trusted David to the point where she showed him how to work the alarm system, including how to turn it off. On March 6, 1980, a desperate David went to Joan's house like he always did, but this time, he brought a weapon with him. Once the door was closed, he brandished the weapon, threatening Joan as he demanded that she hand over all her valuables. Joan tried to run for the alarm, but David caught up with her and choked her until she fell unconscious. He then began to ransack the house for anything of value, but Joan woke back up and attempted to flee. David caught up to her again, as he beat her some more before tying her up with electrical wire. He strangled her again, but this time, Joan didn't survive. After David left her house, he sold the antique coins for $85. Joan's body wasn't discovered until her daughter found her 2 days later. David lay low for a few months before he struck again. This time, it was 83-year-old Arthur Jennings. Arthur was a known homosexual that frequently paid teenagers and young men for sexual favors, and David later alleged that he was one of the young boys that sold himself to him. On August 18th, he went to Arthur's house and strangled him to death, as he then stole $16 and a ring that honored his service in World War I. The attacks were getting more frequent, as on November 16th, David broke into the apartment of 75-year-old Antoinette Brown. He attacked her before strangling her to death with clothing that he had found around her house. After she was dead, David stole some rings and cash. During the investigation, her neighbor told police that she had seen David leaving the apartment complex around 4 p.m., after which she gave a physical description, as the police now had a composite sketch of the suspect. On December 6th, David broke into another apartment, as this one was occupied by 72-year-old Dorothy Lang. He immediately attacked the woman, but Dorothy put up a fight, but David brought a wrench, and he used it, striking her several times in the head and chest, even fracturing multiple ribs. He then wrapped his hands around her neck and squeezed until she stopped moving. After the murder, he ransacked the house before stripping his victim nearly naked, leaving her with just a sweater and a bra on. A month after Dorothy's murder, David was traveling down I-580 at a high rate of speed when he noticed that he just passed a police car. He exited the freeway and entered a residential area, passing several streets before winding up at a dead end. He managed to escape on foot, but once the police searched his car, they found a receipt from a car repair shop that showed the address of his parents' house. When police arrived, his mother and brother Mark were there, but he gave them an audio cassette tape with a note that asked that they keep it in case something happened to him. Once the cassette was played, the police found their smoking gun, as David was heard confessing to multiple murders in explicit detail, saying that he simply freed these people from the problems of the world. The confessions were enough to get a warrant for his arrest, and on February 4th, 1981, he was apprehended at a Holiday Inn without incident. Once he got to the station, he backed up the claims that he made on the tape, while also confessing to another murder. He and 55-year-old Robert Groff had been seeing each other for a minute, and on one of their dates, Robert told David that he'd intentionally given him herpes, and the two got into a fight. Later that night, David shot Robert in the head while he slept. David was later taken to Alameda County Jail to await trial. He shared a cell with 24-year-old Boyd Wayne Johnson, who was in on a rape and murder charge. Boyd demanded to be put in solitary confinement, refusing to talk to anyone. While chatting with other inmates, David heard rumors that Boyd was a snitch, so he planned to kill him. He floated the idea to 3 other prisoners, and all of them refused except for Quentin Shorter. Only a few hours later, the pair burst into Boyd's cell and attacked him. He tried to fight back, but he was quickly overpowered before being severely beaten and strangled to death with a towel. The pair then dragged his lifeless body to the showers and hung him from a water pipe to make it look like a suicide. Once the guards discovered the body, all the inmates were questioned, and as expected, Quentin ratted on David. After searching through his belongings, guards found blood stains on his towel and shoes, as well as numerous abrasions and scrapes on David himself. Skin extracted from under Boyd's fingernails contained DNA that matched David's blood type. David's trial opened in late 1983. At the trial, he retracted his initial testimony and pleaded not guilty to all charges, claiming to have an alibi for the day that Arthur Jennings was murdered. David said that he was working at the Thrift Town secondhand store on that day and presented a timesheet, which displayed that he was at the store at 12:31 p.m. and left at 9:02 p.m. However, the court dismissed this as proof of his innocence, since his brother and his close friend Karen Warden were also worked there, and could have easily falsified the record. David also denied any involvement in Antoinette's murder, claiming that on November 16th, he had been in Robert's trailer, 145 miles away from the crime scene. Robert's neighbor later confirmed these claims, saying that on that evening, he had helped David and Robert install a new water heater. The neighbor's wife later claimed that her husband had been mistaken about the dates, and that the installation had taken place on November 23rd, a week after the murder. She later provided evidence that the couple had been staying with relatives in Yuba City at the time, and had only returned on November 23rd. David also claimed on the day of Dorothy's murder, he was staying with his friend Patricia Buckley in Berkeley. She later confirmed his claims, affirming that between 5 and 10 p.m., David hadn't left the house. Nonetheless, he was found guilty of 5 murders and sentenced to death by the gas chamber on January 27, 1984. No charges were brought against him in Robert's murder, although he remained a suspect in that case. After his conviction, Mason was transferred to the San Quentin State Prison to await execution. He eventually married a woman named Charlene, fully admitted guilt for his crimes, and expressed remorse for what he had done. In the early 90s, his lawyer drew up an appeal, arguing that his client's sentence be commuted to life imprisonment, citing his abusive childhood and mental issues. Despite the likelihood of a new trial and the overturning of his death sentence, David voluntarily withdrew his appeal in June 1993, setting his execution date for August 24th of that same year. He later claimed that his decision was influenced by his remorse and a desire to teach lessons to other criminals, so that he wouldn't repeat his mistakes. In July, journalists visited him on death row, and he gave a 90-minute interview talking about the last 9 years of his life. He said that he had embraced humanism, that he came to understand the pain that he had caused the families of his victims, and declared his readiness to take responsibility for his action. He also said that he had no intention of changing his decision, despite receiving over 200 letters from various people begging him to renew his appeal, and 2 lawsuits from anti-death penalty activists. After refusing to file appeals, in August 1993, David's lawyer, Charles Marson, claimed that his client was insane and unable to make decisions on his own accord. Marson filed another appeal, requesting that David be given a new psychiatric examination, but a panel of 3 judges ruled that his client had a right to decide his own fate. David fired Charles, and he was assigned a new lawyer. David spent the last day of his life with members of his family, refusing a last meal and instead being asked that he and his family dine on the same food provided to other prisoners. David also refused to confess to a priest, and asked for unlimited use of the telephone in his last hours. His only special request was a glass of ice water. California state officials said that David could stop the execution at any time, even when tied to the chair in the gas chamber, by simply saying that he would like to file an appeal, which was already drafted by his lawyer. In case he changed his mind, a telephone was placed in the gas chamber by which David, if he wanted to, could contact his new lawyer Mike Brady. Mike, in turn, would contact the Ninth Circuit, who would order that the execution be halted, giving David at least 3 more years of life. He never touched the telephone, and before the execution, he requested that none of his family members be witnesses to his death, wishing that they remember him as they saw him in his last hours. David Mason was executed on August 24th, 1993 at 12:23 local time, 7 minutes after entering the gas chamber. Before his execution, he was told where his lawyer was amongst the witnesses, and if he changed his mind, he would only have to blink twice to stop the execution. According to Brady, however, once he was told that, David refused to look in his direction. In a later statement, Warden Daniel Vasquez said that David refused to issue a final statement, saying only the following: "No, Warden, I want to proceed. Thank you, Warden." Ah, man. You see what happens when children are abused, when you don't show children the proper love that they're supposed to get. And you see what happens because these children's minds are very fragile. And when you set that precedent early and it just snowballs. Do I really think he was remorseful? I truly don't know. Maybe he just wanted to escape accountability. Maybe he just wanted to get everything over with. I don't know. He is already someone who was suicidal at 5 years old. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate y'all for the support. Leave a like if you enjoy. Hit that subscribe button to my channel. Turn on my post notifications if you haven't already. Thank you. Please be safe. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.